It's at the bottom. No, it's just... No. I know it seems funny.
Nobody messes with people close to me without paying for it.
I've got nothing to hide.
I don't believe you.
Me and Phil are history.
Did you really think I was going to let it go?
I'm innocent. It's all just gossip and speculation.
Find out who shot Phil.
I know who did it. I saw him.
EastEnders, next week on BBC One. Everyone's talking about it.
This is BBC One in the North. Now, the news at 10 o'clock with Peter Sissons and Ian White.
Robert Maxwell's crooked road to ruin. How he got away with it. The official report blames his son and a leading bank. Going to the country, Tony Blair must decide this weekend. Armed police in Belgrade may be about to arrest Slobodan Milosevic. Dicing with danger to the last, a lone British oarsman conquers the Pacific.
And here in the North tonight, a father admits killing his 2-year-old daughter Daniela Hurst while suffering from depression and abandoned because of foot and mouth. The dog owners using the disease as an excuse.
Good evening. 10 years after his bizarre death, the shadow of Robert Maxwell was cast again today over some of those closest to him. The long-awaited official report into the collapse of his businesses and the plundering of their pension funds placed blame on his son Kevin, who gave him very substantial assistance and bore heavy responsibility. The report also pointed the finger at some leading city institutions for not catching on to the frauds. The criticism was broadly accepted, and Kevin Maxwell spoke of his profound regret at the part he'd played.
It was the financial scandal of the decade, if not the century, and the mercurial relationship between Robert Maxwell and his youngest son Kevin lay at the heart of the matter. Today's report from the Department of Trade and Industry concentrates on the sale of shares in Mirror Group newspapers in the spring of 1991. It says the prospectus drawn up by Robert Maxwell's advisors was inaccurate and misleading. The business was already in deep trouble. 6 months later, Robert Maxwell was dead after falling mysteriously from his yacht. As his body was being laid to rest on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem, investigators back in London found there was a £450 million hole in the Mirror pension fund. With the Maxwell business empire collapsing, Mirror Group pensioners took to the streets in protest. Today's report from the DTI concludes Kevin Maxwell bears a heavy responsibility in respect of many of the events. His behaviour was inexcusable. It also says that investment bankers Goldman Sachs bear a substantial responsibility in respect of the manipulation that occurred in the market for Mirror Group shares.
All these people, and there were some very prominent names in the city institutions, were reaping rich benefits. There were rich rewards in commissioned and fees, and that's what they couldn't resist.
Goldman Sachs pointed out that the DTI report cleared it of acting in league with Robert Maxwell. It said it had been deceived by him too and deeply regretted it. Kevin Maxwell and his brother Ian were cleared of fraud 5 years ago. Even some of his harshest critics believe it would be wrong to pursue Kevin further.
I think the inspectors have failed, the criminal system has failed, the DTI, the regulators, the stock exchange, everything has failed. And now to just take it all out on Kevin 10 years later, that would be just beyond any reasonable justice.
Although this report has taken 9 years to complete, it makes no significant new recommendations. But it is a fairly broad indictment of the individuals and corporations who dealt with the late Robert Maxwell on a daily basis. Greg Wood, BBC News, at the Department of Trade and Industry.
Well, earlier today, Kevin Maxwell spoke to our business editor, Jeff Randall.
10 years after the plundering of Mirror Group's pension fund, Kevin Maxwell has had plenty of time to reflect on the many lives that were ruined by the collapse of his father's empire.
I am truly sorry for what happened. There's nothing one can do. One can't turn the clock back. You can't live your life again. You can't make different decisions. You can't change what happened. You can certainly learn from it. You can reflect on what happened. And you can honestly and be sorry for what happened.
Looking back to the time when the money went missing, when the pensions were plundered, was there any time when you should have said no?
I can say to you today that I don't think there was ever a moment at the time that I felt that what we were doing was wrong, that the struggle for the survival of the group wasn't a fair and proper struggle and something that one should be doing. And it's only with hindsight that one understands that one should have stopped earlier.
Now, the report took 10 years to compile and cost the taxpayers £10 million. What do you feel about that? Did the taxpayer get value for money?
The last 5 years have been wasted by the Department of Trade and Industry and by the inspectors, and the blame for that delay lies entirely at their door. And as far as I'm concerned, this is a discredited, disreputable system, and I hope nobody else goes through it.
How important was the role of the US bank Goldman Sachs in the pension scandal?
I think that they have a very primary and important role in supporting my father's acquisition of shares in his own companies, and for that I think they have rightly been pilloried.
In light of the damning report that was published today, can you still do business in Britain?
Of course I can do business here. I do live with the consequences of the collapse and of the criminal trial and of the and will live with the consequences of the findings of the inspectors in this report. And there are many people who won't do business with me, and there are many institutions that won't do business with me.
The DTI is now taking legal advice on whether to disqualify Kevin Maxwell as a company director. It seems unlikely he will ever regain his credibility with mainstream business. Jeff Randall, BBC News.
Since we've been on air, we've been getting reports that the former Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic has been arrested. Earlier this evening, police vehicles and an ambulance had converged on the residential area around his home in Belgrade, and supporters of the former leader gathered outside.
Chanting his name, supporters of former President Milosevic are tonight clustered outside his Belgrade home, hoping their presence will deter the authorities from arresting him. They arrived in force following fresh speculation that his detention was imminent. Since being ousted from office last October, Mr. Milosevic has been under investigation for abusing his power. A senior member of the former president's Serbian Socialist Party told me that a special police squad turned up here earlier this evening, preparing for a possible arrest.
7 cars with around 40 or 50 armed people are present in front of President Milosevic's house, and we decided to came here to be with our citizens behind him.
During his few recent appearances, Mr. Milosevic has looked under pressure. The International War Crimes Tribunal wants him arrested for atrocities allegedly committed in Kosovo. America's set a deadline of tomorrow for Yugoslavia to prove it's cooperating, or else aid may be cut off.
People are afraid of some kind of sanctions against Yugoslavia, so that's kind of a way that America does against this country.
And little by little here, the net around Mr. Milosevic seems to be drawing in. Jonathan Charles, BBC News, Belgrade.
And Jonathan Charles joins us with the latest from Belgrade. Jonathan, can you confirm the reports that we've been getting in the last couple of minutes that Milosevic has actually been arrested?
Well, Peter, what we're hearing here is it's being reported on 2 well-respected local television stations. They're saying the arrest warrants have been issued and he has been arrested. I have to stress, though, there is no confirmation at all yet from the government here. They're not saying anything. I was at a press conference earlier today with the Serbian Justice Minister, and he refused to speculate on just how imminent an arrest was. But he did say that anyone who'd committed a crime would face an arrest. Even senior politicians, and that was taken as a hint that he was talking about Mr. Milosevic.
There seemed to be a big crowd outside his residence. Did anyone see him being taken out?
No, they didn't, and I was up there as well until a short time ago, and there was no sign then of him being taken out. And when I spoke to the senior member of his political party, he was certainly still inside. Mr. Milosevic was still inside and sent a message out to the crowd that he was all right.
They do, however, seem determined that they will arrest him. And when they do, what will they do with him?
Well, they're under terrible pressure from the Americans to arrest him because of this deadline, which I was talking about in the report there. They will probably put him under preventive, what's known as preventive arrest, which means putting him in prison for 30 days initially, whilst they actually investigate him. They won't extradite him to The Hague because at the moment there is no extradition ability under Yugoslav law. There's no way that they have the right to send a Serbian citizen to the International War Crimes Tribunal. I think they prefer at first to deal with this locally.
Jonathan Charles in Belgrade, thank you.